Hey guys, the topic today is Nvidia. It's been on a massive tear lately, but could we be nearing the end of the Nvidia run? We've got Daren Blonski from Sonoma Wealth Advisors showing us how Nvidia has signs potentially of a blow off top. Darren also chimes in on the possibility that we could see a boom and bust with AI, so be sure to stay to the end and make sure to hit subscribe for more commentary and insights from asset managers like Darren. Everybody's looking at Nvidia. Last was the Mag 7, and Nvidia was one of the big players on that, and it's still running up like crazy with the AI boom. So tell us your take on it. How are things looking from your perspective on Nvidia? I think we were talking earlier from a technical perspective on looking at the chart. So I think that's maybe where you want to start, but let's give the download the overview of kind of what you're seeing with Nvidia.
Yeah, one of the ways you become a great investor over time, Jeff, and not that I've reached great investor status. I like to think that I've learned some things, but I'm certainly not in the Drunken Miller category yet, and or the Warren Buffett or the Charlie Munger zone. But you pay attention, and it's interesting because trading is a lot, or investing has a lot more to do with your emotions than I think the average person believes or thinks that it does. And one of the ways I've learned to recognize moments where I need to proceed with caution or moments where I need to step on the gas is sensing emotionally how I feel inside. And usually my emotions and how I feel about something, my behavior should be opposite of that, which is really not intuitive and is really difficult to do. And I'm definitely having some triggering moments with Nvidia and the things I'm seeing in the media. I view the CEO now as kind of this. He's become like God status, and I say that with quotes and lowercase g as not to offend anyone. But the way people are talking about, oh, he's this humble guy and he does it this way. And I read this whole Twitter post that went on and on about how much of a super dude this guy was, which is totally possible, right? One of the stories I love is Nvidia I don't know if you saw this, but it got its start at Denny's, and it makes more profit now in 3 hours or something like that than Denny's makes all year long. It was a conversation at Denny's. And so when I'm feeling these stories be expressed in the public, and I feel like just this just blabbering of how great this individual is. I saw it happen with Elon Musk. We've seen this happen before in the media. Your radar starts to go off, right? Like, okay, wait a sec. I'm not going to join that. I'm your quintessential Generation Xer, Jeff. I just don't like to join things. So when those kind of emotions start, I start feeling this like, gosh, this guy's amazing. He's like Superman. Then my blow off top hat starts to come in, and I start thinking, maybe, just maybe, we've got a blow off top in the making. And so I started doing some analysis.
Blow off top, you mean?
Let me show you an example. So I'm going to pull up a screen here, and I'm a technical guy, right? So I like to look at the charts and make sense of the world through the charts and the investing world. So if we take a look at the Nvidia and Cisco chart. So when blow off top, Cisco was a perfect example of a blow off top, where you just have this company that could do no wrong. Everything was going to become Cisco and chips and computers and yada, yada, yada. And then Cisco misses its earnings, and then the whole world falls apart. Yeah. And you can see back in 2000 with Cisco, the price moved all the way up to just shy of 100, I believe it was. Let me scale this down a little bit. Actually, we're going to do this first to make it a little bit easier for everyone. So when we look at Cisco, I think, we have to look back in history. It's like Mark Twain says, that history never repeats itself, but it tends to rhyme. So we have to go back in history and look at these rhymes of the markets. So volume, these are your volume bars on the bottom here. And then this is the blow off top from Cisco. So before I dive too much into the blow off tops, let me show you what that kind of looks like. So you just go out there, and you don't believe me, you can go Google blow off top, and you'll find all these different images of what that chart pattern looks like. And so, a couple things. You have this kind of first sell off, and then you just have this just rip in the stock, and then it kind of this what we call bull trap happens, and it bounces, a dead cat bounce, and then you have things really fall down. And what's important to note about this is the public likes to think they drive the market and the mania, but they're usually the end of it. And given how many clients are asking me about Nvidia, I'm very confident we're somewhere in the mania phase with Nvidia. Where are we mid, or are we at the top? I don't know. I don't have that ability to predict that or know that. If I have, I certainly would be sipping Mai Tais on a beach in Hawaii somewhere on a Friday afternoon and not broadcasting with you, Jeff. I love you, but that's just the reality of it, right? And so we still have to work for when we still have kids, right? So I think we're probably somewhere in this greed, delusion, enthusiasm area. And there's going to come a point where that switches. And that's what happened with Cisco, right? And I don't know when that's going to happen. It could go much higher. So don't write me a hate mail and say, hey, Daren told me to sell. I'm not telling you to sell. This isn't advice. I'm just talking for educational purposes only about Cisco and Nvidia and the very similar looking charts when you look at it. And so you can see this blow off phase, which when we switch over to Nvidia and we start looking at the Nvidia chart, let's do.
You switch that daily or.
Yeah, here we go. When we start looking at the Nvidia chart, like, wow, that looks really familiar. That's feeling really familiar, right? And you have this blow off looking kind of just enthusiasm, greed. Everybody needs Nvidia. Why don't I have more Nvidia in my portfolio? How did I miss the trade of the century? And then all of a sudden it drops. It has a dead cat bounce. And then we see that happen, right? So it goes like this, and then it drops down, does a dead cat bounce, and then it goes down. That's the way this pattern is setting up. Like, it's not a for sure thing. I don't know if it's going to happen. It could go for another 2,000 points. I don't know. They could split the stock and then it runs again. We don't really know what will happen, but there is definitely a rhyme going on here. And I think that's the key to remember. And so,
I mean, how do you kind of, sorry, go ahead.
Well, so that's as an investor, you have to transition, say, if there is a rhyme here, what do I do with that? Like, how do I manage around that? Maybe you got into Nvidia at $0. Maybe you rode it all the way up and you're a bazillionaire. How do you start to take chips off the table, right? I think that's the question you need to ask yourself. The smart investors start trimming positions when things run too hard, too fast. And I don't think
how do you want to go about doing that then? I mean, if you're looking at trimming positions, what's do you take 50% off the table? Do you take 10%? Do you take 20%? When do you start doing that? When do you think about doing that, kind of with your clients, I guess?
Yeah. So traders also have a saying that says push the trade, right? And it's real hard to know because you're going to be really lucky if you time the top of this thing. And I think if you don't attribute it to luck, then you're confused. Nobody's going to time this thing perfectly at the top except for the lucky ones, or maybe our politicians who get insider information. Because I got to say, some of our politicians put some call trades on this thing right at the perfect time. It's pretty amazing sometimes. But we won't get into that. So, I would start looking at it and saying, okay, well, if I'm up X, then maybe I take half my trade off. Or some people will say, well, if I put $10,000 into this trade and it's worth 50 now, I'm going to take my original chips off the table, right? That the house money, as they say, the $10,000. That's one way to do it. One way is to cut the position in half. There's no right answer. It's what do you feel comfortable with? And accept the fact that say you put $10,000 into Nvidia and now it's worth $50,000. If you lost that $40,000 that you just made, how would you feel? And what would you think? And put yourself in that psychological place now before it's happened, and then act accordingly and appropriately. I think that's the key, right? So that you can sleep at night. And it's not going to be what I can sleep at night with, or Jeff, what you could sleep at night, but it's going to be what Bob or whoever the person is invested, what they can sleep at night at that number. And that's the key. with this. The other option is you say, look, because this is kind of like the Bitcoin diamond hands mentality, is you buy it and you hold it forever, right? And you just say, I don't care if it goes down, it's going to go down. Because the truth is, AI is probably on what's called an S-curve adoption, right? So you're going to have this kind of like area here that we saw with the internet boom and bust, where everything, I mean, if you think about 2001 and Cisco was that stock that kicked off the bust, and everything was www is dot something, right? Like I was going to get all my groceries from www.grocery.com. And, you know, we look 20 years later and, well, lo and behold, we are getting our groceries, but it took COVID to push it that way off the internet. Or Amazon now delivers everything. How often you go shop in the store for something. I think AI is going to absolutely revolutionize our world. It's going to change it in more ways than any of us can even possibly think of. But I don't think it's going to happen overnight. And I think we're going to have a boom and bust first. I think we're going to have everything's AI, and then it's going to implode. And when it implodes, everyone say, oh, that AI stuff was a bunch of bunk junk. And they're going to forget about it. But what's going to happen is underneath the hood, that adoption curve is going to kick in. And then it's really going to change our lives completely. But I think things like what we're seeing out of Gemini with Google, right? Where Gemini all of a sudden is like racist, like, and Google's like freaked out, like, oh, wait, we need to retrain this bot. Like, I think things like that need to be worked out first before we actually get things to the top.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, because I mean, we're looking at this, and again, you know, you gave the caveat like, hey, this could go up, you know, another 2, 3, 5, 10x, who knows? But you know, you're looking at this from a technical perspective as really, again, mirroring, at least on the chart, a blow off top. But fundamentally, you know, you could look at it and say, hey, we're at the earlier stages of AI, and Nvidia is at the forefront of owning that chip technology to run the AI boom. And so you think that there's just the world ahead of Nvidia potentially. So it kind of goes back to like what you said in terms of, you can still leave some money on the table and let it run, but you can, whatever you're comfortable with, take some of that profit off of the table with what you can see with your own eyes looking at the chart.
Yeah. I think that's the key, right? And the thing I always like to remember, you know, you think about the internet days, right? I remember when I first logged on to AOL online and you could chat with people. And it was so cool. You'd be like, whoa, check this out, right? Like, and then you would go on to Netscape, right? And then that was how you'd find stuff on the internet. And where's Netscape today? You know, where are these companies that first started America Online, right? And they are no more, right? Am I saying that Nvidia is necessarily going to go that way? No, I'm not saying that. I don't know that. But when you see these new revolutionary technologies come to the forefront, they tend to, the leaders tend to get just absolutely trounced by the people coming after them because they find opportunities that maybe the leaders don't have. And there is going to be competition. Right now, Nvidia doesn't have much in the way of competition, but it's coming. And there's no way that a capitalistic market is going to let Nvidia make the profits that it's making right now and continue to do that forever. And when that competition comes in, then no longer can Nvidia be priced for perfection as it is right now. And boy, did it deliver perfect earnings. Just a beautiful earning setup. And it delivered this week.
It actually, you know, it kind of reminds me of one of the conversations we had a couple of weeks ago about chasing the trade. At the time we were talking about, you know, Facebook and Meta, but the same thing applies here, right? And so I think it is good to kind of, like you said, recognize the emotions and some of the, you know, anxiety of, you know, do I sell or do I get into this and chase this trade? But be able to recognize those things and take a step back and let, you know, kind of more of a objective strategy take hold and objective decision making, which again, not everybody can do. Always appreciate the insight, Daren. And investors, if you don't know, you can basically just kind of copy what Daren's doing in his own portfolio on Echo Trade. Just copy directly into your brokerage account. Or if you're looking to actually be managed, then you know, talk to Daren at Sonoma Wealth Advisors, and he'll do good by you. He's a good guy and trustworthy. So Daren, happy Friday. Appreciate the time and have a great weekend, man.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Jeff. Appreciate it.